Good day, guys. Welcome. You're watching Open Studio on Cape Town TV. I've got Fredalene Booysen with me in studio today from an amazing organization called Sonke Gender Justice. All right, we're here to speak about everything that's got to do with equality and also GBV. All right, so welcome to the show, Fredalene.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So for those that's watching at home for the first time, that do not know you or the organization, can you just give us a little brief about yourself, where you're from, where you grew up, and how you got involved with Sonke?
Okay, I will try my best because it's not easy to talk about yourself. But like you introduced me, I'm Fredalene Booysen. I'm technically from Kraaifontein. That is where I grew up. I've attended Scottsville Primary and then Scottsville Secondary.
Okay.
And then I started in the tertiary institutions. And as you know, when a person is young, your head is not always where it should be. But anyway, I started in 1997 with an organization called Leadership South.
Okay.
So this was an organization that was placing HIV testers, So I started out as an HIV counselor in 1997. And I worked in the Mitchells Plain district. So people of Cape Town should know about Mitchells Plain district. So there I was a counselor at the day hospital, Mitchells Plain Day Hospital. At Mitchells Plain Day Hospital, I was one of the founders of the first HIV clinic, and particularly the HIV support group in Mitchells Plain. Later on, as the HIV counselor, I became the coordinator for the HIV counselors in Mitchells Plain. Okay. And then I started getting involved with treatment action campaign, because we know in 1997 there was no access to treatment at the time. And then later on, I started becoming so much involved with treatment action campaign while still coordinating Mitchells Plain for Leadership South. And then I volunteered and coordinated Mitchells Plain area for treatment action campaign. Later on, I got involved in the provincial executive committee in treatment action campaign. I became the chairperson of the province.
Wow.
So then I was involved in the politics, and I was up to date with what is happening with HIV. And then in 2005, I became the provincial organizer for treatment action campaign. And that was also a difficult phase because at the time, organizing work for women wasn't very popular. Yeah. You would always have the men, that would be the organizer, because it's a position that would require you to travel a lot, and that wasn't something that women did. So I was one of the first women organizers. Yeah. And that came with its own challenges. At times our men can undermine you, but anyway, I pulled through, I shouldered on. And then later on, I was also in management in the province for TAC. And then I became the campaigns manager, the national campaigns manager for Treatment Action Campaign, and that's where I traveled a lot.
Oh, wow.
Then 2017, now Treatment Action Campaign, the reason why I left TAC, I think, was a decision whether I'm going to move to Gauteng, because Treatment Action Campaign's head offices moved from Cape Town to Gauteng. And my support base is in the Western Cape. Okay. Most of my family is in the Western Cape. And I couldn't leave all of that and just move to Gauteng. And that's why I decided maybe it's time for me to part with TAC.
Why they decided to move?
Well, it was a range of different reasons why they needed to move, but it also had a little bit to do with the resources and where the organization would be best placed politically, because we all know that HIV is a very political issue. So then I started joining Sonke Gender Justice in 2017, and I joined the organization in the position as the Western Cape Community Education and Mobilization Unit Manager. And basically what the unit does is to work with communities. So we work in different communities within the Western Cape. Yeah. We have a men's wellness center in Guguletu. The organization also have an office in Kraaifontein. Yeah. And then the organization's big office, the operational office, is in Woodstock. So the organization does a range of things. Maybe I should just mention that the organization also works regionally. And when the organization was started in 2006, it was to address challenges around gender-based violence and gender inequality. So the organization works regionally. We have a regional programming and networking unit, and that unit is part of a consortium called Men Engage Africa. And this consortium is working across 22 countries, and Sonke Gender Justice is part of the executive in that consortium. Then if we come to South Africa, the organization is operational in the Western Cape. We work in the Eastern Cape, we work in Gauteng, and there's a lot of work that we also do in Mpumalanga. In the province where the organization is not active, we would partner with like-minded organizations, you know, that share the same values as the organization. And then we have 3 units. We have the CEM unit, which is the unit that I belong to, which is the Community Education and Mobilization unit. We have the PDA unit, that is our Policy Development and Advocacy unit. And then, like I mentioned, we have regional programming and networking unit. Then there's 2 supporting structures that is supporting the work of the organization and the unit, and they are communications and resource mobilization. We have a staff component of about 70 people that works regionally and within South Africa to end gender-based violence. And like I said earlier, the activities ranges from running a wellness center in Guguletu to a Safe Ride campaign where we look at the safety of women and gender-based violence in the public sector, in Gauteng specifically with the taxi industry. And then in Western Cape, we work with Unite Behind around the corruption in Prasa that is causing women not to feel safe when it comes to the trains. Then we have a HIV team. So we have a package of service that we deliver because there is a link between gender-based violence and HIV. So the team would go out in the communities to do testing. And part of the service that they provide is to give the HIV test to people. There's a diabetes test that's being done, hypertension, pregnancy test. So all of that is offered. And
organization.
Yes.
Okay, Fredalene. So we're going to take a short break. And then when we come back, we'll just dive a little bit deeper into what the organization is doing to help, you know, these issues of gender-based violence and gender inequality. So for those that's watching at home, I urge you to not go anywhere. We'll be back after this. Hey guys, welcome back. I've got Fredalene with me in studio. She's from an amazing organization called Sonke Gender Justice. And we have to speak about everything that's got to do with inequality, gender-based violence, and how we can help bring back to balance within our communities. So once again, welcome to the show, Fredalene.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So before the break, we spoke about, you know, your past, how you got involved into the organization, all this other work that you've done to give you all the experience you have today. And you've been quite busy over the years. And, you know, just to speak about the organization, what are you doing when we speak about, you know, gender justice? What in line of gender justice are you doing?
Okay. So let me start to first take the opportunity to thank the many individuals and community-based organizations and other NGOs that is working to end gender-based violence across the country. Because I think the work that Sonke Gender Justice is doing is but a drop in the ocean. There's still a lot that needs to be done because we heard from the statistics during COVID that the violence against women has increased. So that alone tells you that there's still a long way to go. So maybe I can start with a national strategic plan on gender-based violence and femicide. The organization has been having a campaign for more than 5 years asking our national government to have a national strategic plan on gender-based violence that can combat gender-based violence and femicide because it's a huge problem within our country. So we recently heard that we now have a national strategic plan on gender-based violence and femicide, but I think we have to reiterate it looks like the commitment is there. But if the resources are not going to be there and the money is not going to be available to push the plan and send the money where it needs to go on the ground and within communities, then again we are just going to have a document that speaks about wonderful ideas and what the country is going to do to combat. But we need the money, and the resources to go where it needs to go. So we've been involved in that process for quite some time. Even last year, when we had the rising up of women that took to the streets, that went to parliament and different places and spaces where they picketed and protested, the organization was part of all of that, especially the one that had those thousands of women in front of parliament at the gates. I was there that day.
Okay.
Other things that the organization is doing, we have a wellness center for men in Gugulethu. And that center is basically run by 90% of men. So we have a male nurse at the center. We have HIV counselors at that center. We have a male coordinator at the center. And then we also have females that is assisting with community mobilization and that is also assisting with testing. Because although the majority of men comes to the center, when men get a STI, for instance, a sexually transmitted infection, they need to bring their partner. And sometimes men needs the partner to come so that they can be couple counseling about some of the challenges that the nurse picked up or that the counselor picked up. So we have that center that is running. There's different support groups at that center. The center is also involved with many organizations that is also addressing gender-based violence and gender inequalities, but also to look at issues around HIV and why is it that men are so reluctant to come out to seek help. It's I can say it's a cultural or traditional challenge where we have men that don't want to come out. It's most of the time the woman that goes to the health facilities to seek help. But that center is there to raise awareness that men needs to come out and to come to the health facilities to look at what is their challenges that they have so it can be addressed. So basically in a nutshell, that is what we do at the center. Then the organization also have a HIV counseling and testing team that goes into the communities because sometimes you want to go to a health facility just to know, for instance, you want to know if you're pregnant or not, so you want a pregnancy test done. But you end up sitting the whole day and then you don't even get helped at the end of the day. Sometimes you just want to know, do you have diabetes or not? Or maybe you want a HIV counseling test. So people sit for long hours in long queues and they don't get help. So this team goes out to the community, put up gazebos, or sometimes there's workplace testing. So people will give them space and the team comes in and they do the testing. Then
the ones in a small, in a like truck kind of like a caravan where they just park somewhere and the community comes to them. I think I've seen them around.
Yes, but those are not us. Those are the very well resourced organizations that can be able to have the truckers. That's the ideal thing to have, you know. But what we do, we have gazebos. So we go out with the gazebos, we put it in the middle of the community, close to the taxi rank or wherever the team decides that they're going to put their gazebos. Then we have volunteers that we work with that will go out into the communities, door to door, to mobilize. And sometimes the team just goes door to door to do testing. You go into the person's house, you check if the person wants a test. And I must say the community is very happy that there is teams like that, because Sonke is not the only team that does the HIV counseling and testing within the community, but the community is very happy because then it means they get to know what is their status on diabetes, whether they borderline hypertension, they get to know what is their HIV status. And young girls that are sexually active and did not use a condom, which they were supposed to have used, they get a pregnancy test. Okay, so they can check on their own whether they test pregnant or not. Then we do referrals for people with hypertension or borderline or high diabetes tests. We would refer them to the nearest health facility. We also do condom distribution, and the different teams distribute 60,000 condoms per month between the 3 teams. All 3 teams test 60 does distribution across the month. That's the target per month. 60,000 per project. Yeah.
It's 100.
Yes. So, and I must say, during COVID,
yeah,
people were asking for condoms because at one stage there was also shortages of condoms. But when we started distributing condoms around about June, the people were so happy and was asking why we're not coming into the communities to distribute these condoms.
Okay.
So we also do material distribution because that further raises awareness and education around gender-based violence and violence in general.
Okay.
Then we also do workshops and trainings and information sessions.
Okay.
And it depends on the request. That will depend how deep we need to go in terms of that.
All right, Fredalene. Wow, thank you so much. That was lots of information, and you guys are quite busy. You're quite busy in the community. So I'm just going to ask you to hold that thought.
Okay.
We're going to go to another ad break, and then when we come back, we'll continue the conversation. If that's okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
guys, we'll be back after this. All right, guys, welcome back. It's almost time to wrap up, but it's still in time to learn something new because I've got Fredalene with me in studio, who is from Sonke Gender Justice organization, and we have to talk about everything that's got to do with women, gender-based violence, and gender equality. All right, so just to continue with our conversation, we spoke a lot about gender-based violence. We spoke a lot about what the organization is doing to help people know the status, the HIV status, know the health status, and also that the work the organization has been doing to help people, stay clean. When I say clean is by distributing condoms, by raising awareness on teenage pregnancy and so forth. So just to narrow it down, you mentioned that there are 2 communities, or one of the communities that you are working with, which is Guguletu and
Kraaifontein and some parts of the metro.
And some part of the metro. Okay. So tell me about the different challenges that you're facing within these areas, because I know Guguletu.
Yeah. Well, every organization, like the community organizations and the NGOs, will know that it's not easy work to be in a community. And there's lots of challenges. And now lately we see a pattern of robberies of these organizations, stealing, break-ins with many organizations in the communities. Yes. So although we're there to assist and to help the communities to help themselves, we've also become targets of crime. In Guguletu, for instance, every year we have about 3 to 4 break-ins. Just this morning, the coordinator at Guguletu Wellness Center called me to say there was an attempted break-in at the section where the male nurse is working. So you can already see that it's very difficult to work like that. Last year, the space that we have was almost totally vandalized and a lot of stuff was stolen.
Yeah.
And these are the difficulties that we have when we work in difficult communities. But I mean, the community at the end of the day also need that wellness center. Yes. With Kraaifontein, there's been also many challenges. I mean, last year there was a lot of riots that flared up, protests, community protests, because people were unhappy, for example, about the fact that they don't have land where they can make homes for themselves. So there were lots of protests, and all these protests, when we work in the different communities, I also have to look at people's safety. Because sometimes when there's protest and we planned something for that day, we just need to cancel it. Yeah. But I think the nice thing is, in the areas where we work or where we have offices, there's staff at those areas. So we won't necessarily have a person that stays in Woodstock that will work in Kraaifontein. Yeah. So people of Kraaifontein will work at Kraaifontein office, and volunteers in the Kraaifontein space and area will work in Kraaifontein. So it's the same with Guguletu. Okay. Like 99% of the staff is from Guguletu, from Nyanga. So it makes it very easier to engage within that community, because these will be the people that will sit on the different community structures and platforms representing the organization. These will be the faces that people are familiar with. So it's not that difficult then to work in that community. So across the province, in the areas where we work, we have staff from those areas and volunteers from those areas that assist in the work of the organization.
Now, tell us about the court.
Okay. Yes. So the organization also does court case monitoring. The justice system is just not benefiting or working for poor people. You know, it takes people many years to get justice if someone was raped or murdered, and I think we're all aware of that. And although the government is saying they've added so many extra courts and did this and did that and added resources, you still don't feel it on the ground that this is happening. So there's court cases that we support, and the organization have like a small criteria to decide whether you take up a case or not. But sometimes we also have community members that comes to the organization to ask if we can assist, because maybe a child was raped, or maybe there was a hate crime of a lesbian that was murdered just because of a sexual preference. So these are the type of cases that we would support. There was many cases that has been thrown out of court, or the investigating officer just becomes quiet, and then communities don't know what is their rights, that they can go back to the investigating officer to ask what happened with my case, you know. So there's many cases like that that we got back into court. And then also we protest in front of the courts to draw attention to the issue and to raise awareness about the court case, but it's also supporting the family and the survivor in that specific cases. So that entails the court case monitoring. So there's also the Safe Ride campaign, for instance. This is activities that we have to raise awareness about gender-based violence in the public sector when it comes to transport. And in Gauteng, our team is very active with engaging with the taxi associations. So they would do like workshops to raise awareness and to make people aware about their actions. Because sometimes I think people is not aware that they doing something wrong. So they are engaging with the taxi associations. In Western Cape, when it comes to public transport, we have a coalition called Unite Behind. I'm sure you've heard about Unite Behind. So it's also like a consortium of different organizations, and there's a range of issues that the coalition is tackling, but they're also looking at PRASA, you know, and the challenges and corruption that is happening there, that is preventing women and children to have a quality service, you know, where you feel safe when you're in the trains or in the taxis.
So if there's anyone out there right now that wants to be part of the organization, you know, that wants to move with this movement, how can they do so, and how can they get a hold of you?
Okay. So maybe I just wanted to add that this is not an easy job to do, because what you practice or what you preach, you have to practice. You cannot preach about gender-based violence, but when you with your family or when you at home, you abuse your wife or you talk loud to your children. Because we know that gender-based violence have many forms. It can be physical, it can be mental, can be psychological, and it can be economical. So you have, it have to start with you as an individual. Be more aware of your actions, you know, when it comes to violence, and especially gender-based violence or violence against children. You can also contact the organization. You can find us at www.genderjustice.org.za. You can also call our Western Cape office at 021 423 7088. And you have to start at home as well. You cannot preach to the community and want to tell other people how to behave, but your own behavior in the house, you're not starting in the house. We have to start talking about sex. We have to start talking about violence in order to end gender-based violence.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that information. And we've come to the end of the show, unfortunately, and I can see there's so much burning in your heart that you want to speak about. But yeah, guys, you can always get more about this organization. Go out there, search out, look out the social media platforms, give them a call and see what they can do to help you. So thank you once again for coming to the show, ma'am. And for those watching at home, thank you for being part of today's conversation. So from my side and Cape Town TV crew, till next time, bye-bye.